Good morning and welcome back to the Haven Financial Group radio show. I'm Larry Kolvig, founder and CEO of the Haven Financial Group, coming to you every week with Kim Kerrigan talking about retirement, the complexities of it, the decision making, avoiding some of these mistakes. So if we're ringing a bell, feel free to give us a call. This is important times, and before you know it, retirement comes quickly. And again, I just had somebody last week. They're about 6 months from retirement, and they are really concerned, especially this segment we're going to talk about. Do I have enough? Have I saved enough? And will I be okay? And this particular meeting proved to be very beneficial, and they did a much better job than they thought. Now, we love that because on the flip side of that coin is if you haven't, you deserve to know, because denying the facts and reality are not going to make it better.
Sure, absolutely. So when someone sits down with you and they say, do you, I would assume one of the very first things you ask them is, what's your goals here, right?
You said it. And we have a very systematic process at Haven, whether you come out to a class or you're new to us or you're referred by your friend or family member. We're going to do the discovery meeting, and we do it the same every time to really talk about what are your goals, what are your objectives, and we're going to ask you questions that you've probably never been asked about. Do you have estate planning done? Who's doing your taxes? We'll investments, insurance. We're going to cover everything with a wide brush. We're not in any hurry. There's no cost to sit down with us. That can be an hour, 2-hour discovery meeting. So now you got a good idea of who we are, and we have a good idea of what you're trying to accomplish.
Sure.
That just begins the process.
I'm sure.
From there, if one wants to come back for a more detailed strategy session, that's step 2. And we'll come up with some suggestions and recommendations in any areas. We'll hone in on some of them. And if one chooses that, you know what, this could be a good partnership, because it should be a partnership, then we would start the implementation process. And again, that just goes into monitoring and adjustment. And we have no quotas to how many times people can come in, because we want people to come in and address all these retirement topics as often as they need to give them the confidence that they're making the right decisions. And confidence in retirement, there's nothing better than that. There really is. That's our process. And it's, again, we're not high pressure headquarters. I always say, if you want to go to a timeshare sales meeting, go to a timeshare sales meeting, because we're the opposite of that.
Well, I think that you have said before here on the show that you're not really into some of these old time strategies. You think some of them are a little bit outdated, and the idea of like maybe the 4% rule or the 80% rule, which we can walk through. But you feel pretty strongly about the idea of to determine if someone has enough money to get through retirement, you have to just look at their situation and work it through their particular retirement. What's good for one is not necessarily good for all.
This is not a one glove fits all.
Yeah.
This is not cookie cutter. I'll bring up Tim this past week, who's going to retire in 6 months. A local company here. He's done good. He went through divorce, and he felt bad. He's like, well, I don't have much compared to others. And I'm like, well, nobody's judging, but you actually did a very, very good job. And he was saying, well, my Social Security is $4,000. I think I spend $6,000. And by the way, we really want to look at spending and expenses. Very important. And he goes, I think I need $6,000 in retirement per month. Well, Social Security was $4,000, and he has 2 little pensions. And so he doesn't even need much from his retirement nest egg, which was more than adequate. And he's like, I think from what you're telling me, I could actually retire right now. And I said, we're not telling you to do anything, but could you? Of course you could. Yeah. He had no idea. He thought he was in a world of hurt. So as we look at all these various areas, distinct phases of spending, do we have to tighten that a little bit? Oh, and by the way, please factor in healthcare, because people always underestimate healthcare. It's not cheap. We want to make sure we have an accurate budget, and we don't like the word budget, whether you're young or old, but it's why when we do Monte Carlo projections, the investment team and the certified financial planners on my team, we'll have a category that we call anything else. Healthcare, do you want to travel? And we'll have come up with a number, and we'll add that to the overall amount that people need, because there's always something else that comes up, and then the car or the furnace or the grandkids. So when we get into detailed planning, we're factoring all these things in. 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months later, we'll sit down again and we may have to modify some of these changes. You know, health, we ran into a health situation. Your savings got decimated because of health care. And unfortunately, I have one of my clients in this past week. She had a relapse of cancer and we're praying for her, but she had to use up quite a bit of her savings for medical expenses. These things come up. So reassessing these things, retirement, you've heard me, Kim, say this many times. Retirement is more than a meeting once or twice a year for 45 minutes to an hour.
Right.
If you're not getting more attention than that, you deserve to get more attention, especially for what you're paying. And by the way, most people don't know what they're paying, and many of them are paying way too much. Nothing's free, but you're owed transparency in an industry that we're in today. If you're not getting transparency, I'd ask more questions.
So, Larry, how do you guys answer the question, though, when someone comes in and lays everything out for you and says, do I have enough?
Well, we're not the only ones with high-tech software. This industry's got some great software, Monte Carlo projections, all kinds of it out there where, all the inputs go in. We put all the inputs in, and we want to do it accurately. So if you're leaving something out, that doesn't do any good. So then these reports can do it based on inflation. We factor in inflation, and we're going to factor that in high because inflation's a game changer. We're going to use reasonable returns. I always say any financial person can puff up numbers and make them look better than they actually are.
Sure.
And I call that a waste of time. We want to be realistic. We want to factor in inflation, taxes, reasonable returns, everything into the equation. And I say it's kind of a worst case scenario. Show me one of the worst case scenarios based upon 1,000 iterations.
Right.
Of yours might not be anything like those 1,000 iterations, but what is the median? And we're going to go through in as much detail. For some, it's more high level because they don't want major detail because it'll give them a headache. In others, more engineers, they want to dig down deep in there. And we're willing to take and spend as much time. And I said, we go slow. We're not in any hurry. It took years to get to retirement. We're not going to rush through something because we want to make sure we're not leaving anything out of the equation. We want as much accuracy in any of these areas from what are your income stream, what are your expenses, what types of investments, what are you passionate about? We'll even get down to, are you charitable? Now, you don't give charitably for tax reasons, but I can tell you if you are charitable, it can open up some tax ideas, qualified charitable distributions, donor advised funds. Again, it sounds complex. Maybe your head is spinning. But that's why we're here. That's why a partner to lean on. So again, 612-504-8400. Call us and ask questions. Or just set up a time to come in. There is no cost. There's no strings attached.
And Larry, just so that our listeners know, you guys are very honest, right? I mean, you have had people who walk through the door and you've had to say to them, you're not ready.
100%. You're going to get straight shooters here because that's the way I was brought up. And that's the only way I know. There's many people we can help, many people that come in thinking we can't help, and to some degree we can. Are there some that come in that we're not the right fit for them? Yeah, it's very possible. And there's some that come in that they're not the right fit for us,
right?
In whatever that means. But for most, it's an education. I love to hear it's so relaxed here. It feels good. I always say if it doesn't feel right, go to the next place. If it feels too stuffy, probably not the right place. Or if you don't feel comfortable,
right,
move on to the next one. But have a plan with somebody and don't just put it on the shelf. Make sure that it's being looked at on a regular basis.
Absolutely. 612-504-8400. If you're hearing something that's ringing a bell with you, if you have some questions, if you'd like to sit down, as Larry said, with someone and just talk through where you are and find out, if you are in fact ready, or maybe you aren't ready, but you'd like to start planning. 612-504-8400. That's how you reach the folks at Haven Financial Group. Don't forget to go to havenfinancialgroup.com, learn a little bit more about the firm, learn a little more about those educational seminars. Larry and his team feel very strongly about the idea that people educate themselves about the different steps associated with retirement. It just makes your question answering a lot easier. And it also, of course, just makes you feel more confident. havenfinancialgroup.com. All right, Larry, when we come back, let's talk about understanding the costs and benefits of fixed incomes. That's coming up right after the break here on the Haven Financial Group Radio Show.